So I had said a while back that I was going to do a new post regarding DNA testing, AncestryDNA, and related matters, and so I suppose I'm going to start out with part 1. So, what is going on with DNA testing companies such as Ancestry when the results are a little skewed? And I know that this is for, I would assume, pretty much all ethnic groups across the board, because I know that, especially if you're mixed, I've come to notice that's when it, for lack of a better term, becomes, trying to think how to put this very carefully, like a real sticking point, because I remember even with, trying to really think how to put some of this, and I know I have to be careful with the terminology, so if I'm not as careful with my terminology, or if I offend anybody's sensitivities, I do apologize for any offense that I legitimately create, but if your offenses are basically your own problem, then they're your own problem. And so I want to start out by addressing, first of all, Ancestry definitely skews their results. I remember when I first took the DNA test, and I've said that, of course, I'm Jewish, especially on my dad's side, but my mom as well. But I can tell you, Ancestry goes out of their way to skew it for certain groups. I found out that I'm not the person, or the only person who's experienced this. I've literally gotten DNA matches whom, just based on their last names, are absolutely Jewish, yet they're classified as Central and Eastern European or something else. Oh, there's a couple of things here, and it's also the same way for example, the Métis. And the Métis, as I assume quite a few people know, are a native Canadian and French ethnic group. And the Métis definitely have it skewed for them as well. And I say that because before Reddit unfortunately went down the deep end, and the deep end in a bad way, there was a post where a lady had talked about she knows she's Métis, she knows she's a documented member of the Métis ethnic group. Well, all her DNA was French. And as I said, I got the same thing where Ancestry tried to classify me as something other than I was. And I said where I've gotten matches that I know are Jewish, and they're also classified as Central and Eastern European or something else. The thing that you have to understand is, and this is where part 1 comes in, the thing you have to understand right away is the confirmation and selection bias. Because other DNA companies, they definitely have it, but, well, not like Ancestry does. Family Tree DNA, yeah, they admit that their reference panels aren't exactly 400 to 1,000 at minimum for each group. When I was in college and we were taking research methods, when you were doing a study, you had to have 1,000 in each group and 1,000 in your control group. Ever since I graduated from college, it had become 400. But when I was in college, it was 1,000. And that was so you could have enough of sample so that you could extrapolate if you really needed to extrapolate. Your sample had to be as random as possible. You had to have groups of hypotheses, basically so that you didn't have a predetermined hypothesis. And you also had to have a 95% confidence rate. And Ancestry even admits, if you look at their white paper, they admit that they throw out samples in their single origin panel if that sample does not agree with their data. So if someone reports being, for example, Métis, we're just going to throw out your sample. We don't care that you say you're Métis. It doesn't agree with our predetermined narrative or predetermined bias or whatever you want to call it. So they just throw it out, and they literally say that in the paper. They say something along the lines of, we throw out data that doesn't agree with whatever. And so part of the reason that Ancestry, and again, this is not just for Jews, this is for Métis people, and this is for other ethnic groups as well. There is confirmation and selection bias, and of course what exacerbates that is when the control group is not at the number at which it needs to be, and when a minimum sample in each group is not 400 to 1,000. And again, when I was in college, it was 1,000, and I graduated college in the 2013 to 2014 academic year. That's a long story. And regardless of when I would have graduated, because it was a kind of in-between graduation, I still would have had to have had 1,000 in each group, or I would have completely had to take the class all over again. Now, I'm seeing that Ancestry can not only get away with skewing the numbers, but they can get away with skewing the data overall by saying, if it doesn't agree with our predetermined hypothesis, we're just going to throw it out.